Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is our last actual text chapter that we had of our Play of the Hand class. Next week is we're just going to play the whole time. It's our play party. And so there won't be any new material introduced. But this week we covered chapter 7, which was on managing the trump suit, and chapter 8, which was on putting it all together. Although putting it all together, there was just a couple of things that we covered in there because it's kind of a reiteration of other things that you've done. Okay, so the first thing that we covered in this week's class is on managing the trump suit. The question is, first of all, drawing trump. What do we need to think about when we're drawing trump? Well, usually when you're drawing trump, you and your partner have 8 or 9 together. Sometimes you have 10 or even 11. Sometimes you have 7, but the vast majority of times you either have 8 or 9 in your trump suit. Um, if you have 8 in your trump suit, there are 5 out against you, and those can be split 3-2, 4-1, or 5-0. And the majority of times that's split 3-2, 70% of the time. So you can focus a lot of your plan on assuming that you have a 3-2 split, because that's usually going to be the case. 30% of the time, no, but 70% of the time, yes. You sometimes need to think about, well, what happens if I don't get a 3-2 split? But mostly at this point, just assuming you have a 3-2 split is good. You need to get really used to counting the trump as they come in, because you need to keep track of how many trump are out and how you're pulling them in. So the first round you draw, 2 will be played. You play 1 round, 2 people play. You play the second round, 2 people probably play. Maybe one person plays and one person doesn't. If one person plays, then you know you've got a 4-1 split because the other person doesn't have any. So first round, everybody plays. That's 2 down out of 5 if you have 8. You lead them again. Both people play. That's now 4. There's now 1 left out. So you lead them again to try that last one out. Then don't lead them anymore. Once you've gotten the trump out of the hands of your opponents, you don't have to worry about them trumping in. That's the whole reason that we do this. So you don't have to worry about them trumping in. On the other hand, if the one that is left out is bigger than ones that you have, generally don't pull it. Just let it be out there. They'll win it whenever they're going to win it. But don't waste 2 of your trump to pull in 1 of their trump if it's a higher one. Now, if it's a lower one, yes, you do need to. Now, if it's 9 out against you, 9 that you have in trump suit, you have 4 out against you. Usually those are split 3-1, but pretty often they're split 2-2. 3-1 is about 50% of the time, and 2-0 is 40% of the time. So you've got one of those splits about 90% of the time. And 3-1 is more common than 2-2. We've always said that they tend to break as evenly as they can on an uneven number and not evenly on an even number. So a 9, you're usually going to get a 3-1 split, although 2-2s are not that unusual. But you need to get used to thinking in terms of this, because one of the first things you should always do when playing a suit contract is draw your trump. Draw your trump in. There should be a reason that you're not drawing your trump in. If you don't have a reason you're not drawing your trump in, you need to draw your trump in. Now, I see a lot of times, and I was telling the class that when I was playing last week in the 0-20 game, because somebody needed a partner, and I just noticed that time after time, people were playing a suit contract and they were going to other suits and doing other things and then coming back and pulling their trump. And a couple of times they lost what tricks they should not have lost because people trumped in unexpectedly. And if they had pulled those trumps out of the people's hand, they wouldn't have got those. So we're doing a lesson this week on when to pull trump in our 0-20 class. And you too, should think about the fact that you always need to draw trump first, unless there's a reason not to. And there is rarely a reason not to. But let's do talk about what the reasons not to are. I'm over on page 249 in the textbook, and there are 3 reasons to delay drawing trumps. That is, if you have too many quick losers, if you need to ruff on the board, so you need to get rid of losers, you need to use the trump you have on the board to ruff, and if you need to use the trump suit for entries to the board. So those are 3 reasons you might have not to pull trump in. So let's talk about each one of those. The first one on page 249, you have an example here of a 2-diamond contract. The opening lead is the 2 of hearts. And if we look back and forth here, we need to get 8 tricks. We can only afford 5 losers. So let's look at the losers we have. In spades, we have no losers. In hearts, we have 2 losers. In diamonds, we have 1 loser. And in clubs, we have 3 losers. Now, after we get the ace of hearts, we can see that we have 3 quick losers and that totals, by the way, to 6. That's 2 in hearts, 1 in diamonds, 3 in clubs. That's 1 more than we can afford. So we can't afford for them to take 3 club tricks and get to take the rest of the tricks they're entitled to. We can't do much about that heart trick, but maybe there's a way we can keep them from taking 3 club tricks. The only way to do that would be to maybe try the finesse in spades. If the finesse in spades works, then we can use the other, we'll have 2 winners in our hand in spades, so we can use one of those to throw away either a heart or a club. We just need to get rid of one of those, and it doesn't make any difference which one we get rid of in our hand. We'll throw that on a good spade. But to do that, we need to go over there twice, and if we draw trump first, they're going to take the ace of diamonds and then take the 3 clubs and the heart, because both suits are now unprotected because we lose the ace of hearts on the first round. So really, you can't afford to draw trump right now. You need to take that finesse in spades first and see if you can develop that extra trick to throw away one of the losers. Otherwise, those are just going to lose. So that is one reason not to draw trump first, is when you have too many quick losers and you need to get rid of one of the losers. Set up something so you can get rid of one of the losers before you draw your trump. Now, a lot of times I see people not drawing trump because they're missing the ace, or they only have small cards in the suit and they're missing a lot of top cards. The thing about that is those high trump cards aren't going to go away. They're going to win whenever they're played. So there's no point in you ignoring them and hope that they'll just all come in at the end. But in this case, we don't want to play it because we want to set up the spade finesse first, and then we'll draw our trump in. But then by then we will have gotten rid of one of the losers that we have, and then the rest of them are okay. Another reason that you don't want to draw trump first is if you need to trump on the board. So you see that you have trumping that you need to do on the board. Well, if you draw the trump in from the other people, you will be using one from your hand and one from the board to do that. You can't afford to do that and have trump over there to use to trump something. There's an example of this on page 251. 251, we have a 2 spade contract, and the 10 of hearts is led. And if we look, and we're playing 2 spades, we have 1 loser in spades, because we've got 8, but we're missing the queen and jack. So 1 loser in spades, probably. 1 loser in diamonds, 3 losers in clubs, and 1 loser, in diamonds, and 1 loser in clubs. So that's too many. That is 6. We can only afford 5. But what we're probably going to need to do now is rough a diamond in dummy. So you're going to need to be able to rough a diamond in dummy because you have only 2 over there. So you're short over there. You can't get rid of the clubs because you've got too many over there, and you can't get rid of the hearts because you're even there too. But you do have some shortness in diamonds, so that's a possibility. So what you want to do there is you want to not play trump because you need to have the trump in the hand, the little trump over there in your hand, in order to be able to rough the diamond. So they're going to win with the, you're going to win with the ace of hearts, and then you're going to lead a diamond. They're going to win the diamond. They're going to lead something back. Then you need to lead another diamond. Then they'll lead something back that you'll win. Then you need to play that third diamond and rough it over on the board. And that gets rid of that club, that diamond loser. And then you'll still have a club loser and you'll still have another heart loser. Well, you've already lost those because they've led those back. So that's the reason. Now, this reason is probably more prevalent than some of the other reasons. You need to do this a lot. So you need to stop and think, if I want to trump and dummy, can I draw my trump first? Now, in this case, you could actually draw 2 rounds of trump. You could draw the ace and then the king, because you just need to keep 1 over there. And that might be a little safer to do that. Draw the ace and then the king and then lose the diamond. Okay, the last example of when not to draw trump first is over on page 252. And this is when you need to use the trump suit for entries. In other words, you're going to be kind of drawing trump. You're going to be playing trump, but you're using it to get entries to the board. In this case, we've got a 2-heart contract. The opening lead is the 4 of clubs. And if we look back and forth here, we've got 2 losers in spades. We've got no losers in hearts. We've got 2 losers in diamonds and 2 losers in clubs. That is too many. That's 6. We can only have 5. So let's look and see what we can do. Can we do anything about the spade losers? Probably not, because we don't have shortness over there. We're kind of short in south hand, but remember, we don't develop any extra tricks by trumping in the long hand, trumping in the major suit hand. Then we can look over at diamonds. Well, we've got 2 losers in diamonds, but maybe there's a chance for a finesse. And we look at clubs. There's no chance to get rid of one of those club losers. So our only chance is that we are going to need to lead diamonds, and we need to hope that either the king and the queen are in the east, or one of them's in the east and one of them's in the west. Either one of those will let you have another diamond trick. You just need one more trick because you have 2 losers in diamonds. You need to get rid of one of them. So if you we're going to need to get over to the dummy side in order to make that diamond finesse. So we can't really pull all of our trump in. So what we will do is we'll go over to the dummy side with the king of hearts and lead a diamond. Now they're going to win this trick in the west, and they're going to lead something back to you. They're probably going to take the 2 clubs that they have. But as soon as they take those 2 clubs and they lead something back that you can win, then you'll have to go back over using your trump, back over to the dummy side, and then lead another diamond before you pull the last trump in, because you have to make that last trump good. So this is like pulling your trump because you are playing trump twice, but it's done to have entries over in the board more than it is to pull trump. You are pulling trump, but you're really using it to get entries onto the board. Okay, so that is talking about managing your trump suit and controlling your trump suit. Then the next idea is on page 255. because not only can we use the trump suit to develop other tricks for us in our hand, we can use the trump suit to keep them from taking winners in their long side suit. That's when we need to have enough trump left that we can do that. That's why we like to have an 8-card fit or a 9-card fit. A 7-card fit, while it's okay, does not usually give us any, because there's 6 out against us. Usually by the time we bring those in, we don't have any left to use to control the opponents by not letting them take tricks. One of the first ideas here on page 255 is what I mentioned earlier. Don't worry about drawing an outstanding high trump, because you're going to use 2 of your trumps to draw their trump in. So if you've led, you have 5 out against you, you've got an 8-card trump fit, there's 5 out against you. You lead once, 2 of them come in. You lead twice, 2 of them come in. Now the one that's left is the ace. Well, don't lead them again. You don't need to lead them again. They're going to take the ace at some point. So let them take it whenever they're going to take it. Don't use your 2 trump to pull in their 1 ace. Their 1 ace is going to be good without you using any trump to pull the ace in. So don't draw the outstanding high trump unless you really need to for some reason. Another idea is ducking, and this is on page 257, excuse me, page 257. Sometimes to maintain control of the hand, you need to duck the trump in order to maintain control. And this on page 257 is an example of that. This is a 4-spade contract. We've got 3 losers in spades. We've got 1 loser in hearts. We've got no losers in diamonds, and we've got no losers in clubs. But still, that's 3 losers in spades and 1 loser in hearts. 4-spade contract. So in this case, our spades are a little spotty. We have the ace and 3, and then we have the jack and 3. So we're going to have to lose at least one of those. We shouldn't lose all 3. But what we want to do is we want to lead one of our spades and then let them take the king or queen. Because if we lead our spades and we take the ace, and then we try to take another one, they've still got the king and the queen. So we need to lose one first so that we will be in control when we get back to leading the rest of our trump suit. And you can see there that the king and queen are both on one side. So they're going to get at least one of those, but then we should be entitled to the other 2. So we should really only lose 1 suit, 1 trick in this suit, maybe 2, but not 3. And that would give us our contract, because we've got 4 losers and we can afford to have 3 losers. Now, the final one in here is when to draw the outstanding trump. And that's on page 258. Now, I just told you, don't draw the outstanding trump. If there's a high one out against you, don't draw it. Don't use 2 of yours to draw that trump in. But naturally, as in bridge, there's exceptions to everything. There is sometimes when you want to draw that in, even though it takes 2 of your trump. And that's when you can't afford to let them just play it anytime they want to, because you are setting something up in the board, for instance, and you need to be able to get back over there. So you need to force them to play theirs, because if you don't, you will not be able to take the tricks you're entitled to. And the example on page 258 gives us an example of this. In this, we have 1 loser in spades. We have 1 loser in hearts. We have 2 losers in diamonds, and we have no losers in clubs. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's too many. So we need to figure out what to do. Well, the easiest thing to do is we're going to be able to set up those clubs and win all those club tricks. But when we draw our trump, we can't wait until the end. In other words, if we play the ace of trump and we play the king of trump, there's still going to be the queen that's out against us. And my rule earlier said, well, don't draw that queen. Don't worry about it. Just leave it out there. But in this situation where you want to set up those clubs, you can't wait till you're trying to set up your clubs to let them play the Queen of Hearts. So you need to go ahead and knock the Queen of Hearts out so that when they come back, you can set up your club tricks. And you need to do that early before you've given up other leads. Okay, that was the main topics in Chapter 7, Managing the Trump Suit. In Chapter 8, there's really only one topic that I really wanted to talk to you about because Chapter 8 is a putting it all together chapter, and it uses all the techniques that we've talked about so far in the class to talk about how to use them in various scenarios. I think this chapter is a really good chapter to read, but discussing this chapter is not as good because we're discussing things really that you already knew instead of introducing new concepts. But there is a new concept on page 296. On page 296, there is a phrase that you'll hear a lot in bridge, which says, with 8 ever, with 9 never. And I need to explain to you what that means. What that means, the situation is, and this is a common situation, you have the ace and king of trump, but you don't have the queen. So when you draw your trump in, should you play the ace and play the king and hope that the queen falls? Or should you finesse, or should you do something else in order to make the queen good? And this rule tells us with 8, you always finesse, and with 9, you never finesse. Now, nothing in bridge is always or never, or at least very few things are always or never, but this is a pretty good rule. If you have 8 out, and then you are going to finesse. And so look at the example on page 296 in the middle there. For this trump suit, you will play the ace, and then you will play a small one and finesse, hoping that to catch the queen. If the queen is in the west side, you'll win. If the queen is in the east side, you won't win. It's a 50-50 proposition, but it's still a better chance than if you just play the ace and just play the king. The queen is not likely to fall. It would have to be a 3-2 split with the queen on the short side, which can happen, but it's not that likely. It's not as likely to happen as it is for you to get the 50-50 finesse. But compare that with the one on top of page 297. Now you have 9 tricks, and now it's safer to just draw the ace and draw the king, and the queen should fall. Not always will the queen fall. If it's 3-1 and the queen is in the side with 3, it won't. If it's 4-0, it won't. But if it is 2-2, which is likely, or if it's 3-1 with the queen being the 1, that's where it gives you the better chance to not take the finesse, just to play the ace and to play the king. So this is a common rule. And think about this, when you have the ace and the king and you're trying to decide how to get the queen, should I play for the drop or should I finesse? If you have 8, you should finesse. If you have 9, you should never finesse. You should play the ace and the king and go for the drop. Okay, that's mostly what we discussed in class last week, and then we played some hands. Next week in our class, next Saturday, we're going to spend the whole time playing hands. We're going to go back through the book and pick out some key examples from the book and play those hands and see how we do on those, how well we're able to use the techniques and the rules that we've gotten. All right, guys, that's it for today. I will see you on Saturday. Bye, Richard.